Hi, in this video we're going to go through a real-world example of using GitHub Copilot in agent mode through Visual Studio 2022 to kind of migrate a 10-year-old MVC application to .NET 8. So here I'll be using three different AI models, kind of comparing and contrasting between the three. It's not a full kind of tutorial of how you would migrate an MVC5 application over to .NET 8, ASP.NET Core, or the kind of latest version or anything like that. But it's just to kind of give an example, really, of the three different kind of models, and some of the kind of problems that I've come up against with each one of the models, and kind of some of the constraints as well with the kind of GitHub Copilot in agent mode. So so without further ado, we'll jump over to demo. So we'll start by having a quick look at the solution that we've got. We've got a number of different projects within the kind of solution, as you'd expect. It's quite a big solution with quite a few different files within the project. So we've got the main MVC 5 project here. So in here we've got the kind of controllers. Go into one of the account controllers and you can see it's doing some of the redirects, and it's passing back some view models. So then we've got some helpers to help us to kind of do the social media network authorization, which is what this particular application's for. And then we've got some models. So in here we've got some models about user data. Again, this is, like I said, dealing with social media, tweets and posts and that sort of thing. So as you can expect, as the kind of models are relevant to that. Then we've got some views in here. So if we go into the account folder here, we can see we've got we've got a registration form here. So again, passing back some of that model data and in between the model and the controller. So that's the kind of the basic structure of the MVC5 application. Then we've got some Azure web jobs which aren't really applicable to this migration. I've already migrated those over to .NET 8. And then we've got a library. So in here we've got some more helpers to kind of help us communicate with Azure or do some SMTP type of kind of logic in there. And then we've got some migrations for the DB. So we're using the entity framework code first. We're kind of upgrading and downgrading the data structure, and then we've got some models in here which are where all the kind of business logic is. So if we have a look at some of the kind of user details, like I said, so that's the kind of main driving force behind that. So we've got the kind of user detail info there. We've got some more info in here, and then we've got some kind of post network activity, recipients, that sort of thing, and then so and then the kind of the main purpose of this video, like I said, it's not to go through all of the migration, but it's just to kind of go through some of the GitHub Copilot different models that we can use, and some of the things that I've seen as I've been trying to migrate this, quite legacy. If I just go into the kind of properties of that, it's the .NET Framework 4.8. Whereas the library files, like I said, I've upgraded those to .NET 8 and targeting 4.8 framework for the MVC app, and then .NET 8 for the web jobs. So it's just to kind of go through and kind of see, like I say, the differences between the different models and what I've experienced trying to migrate something of this kind of size over to a more modern technology, really. So what I'll do is I'll move over to migrating this to new formats with Gemini 2.5. So what we'll do is we'll paste in the kind of prompt that we need to start using. So Copilot's obviously now going away and analysing the solution and all of the different projects within that solution. So it'll come back and kind of give us an analysis and a plan ultimately of what what the kind of agent's going to actually do in this particular case. So we can see it's now analysed the main project, and it's kind of converted that over, or knows what it needs to do to convert that over. And it's given us a high level plan of what it's going to do. Which is exactly kind of what we asked it to do, really. So it's it's going to analyse the source projects, it's going to prepare the target, it's going to migrate any core components, and then it's going to build, test, and refine everything that we've asked it to do. So shortly it'll kind of start to go away and kind of start implementing some of those changes. So like I say, we are working in agent mode, so as I would expect with this particular task, it should kind of go away and start doing stuff on its own. And it has done. It's put a comment in there. Not quite sure why it's done that, but one of the things that I've noticed with the kind of Gemini is that it's kind of working baby steps to begin with, really, but it is doing what we asked it to do. So it's gone away and built, so I did a couple of comments, done a little bit of coding, and then tested it, or built it I should say, rather than test it. So that's kind of good in that sense, but it did stop, so I'm not quite sure why it stopped there. So kind of just go through that process again, and hopefully it should kind of get through a bit more details. And now it's kind of kicked back into life again, and it's doing some stuff. It's doing quite a bit of commenting. It has made some code changes to redirect to the dashboard or the account, depending on what it is that we want it to do. But it's it has kind of stalled a bit again, and it's updated one of the views. So again, it's kind of progressing through, and it's wouldn't necessarily say, well, I suppose it is understanding what we've asked, and it's understanding what the code is, but it's just, like I say, plodding through and making some changes here. So and it looks like it's stopped again, so not quite sure what's going on there. Let's give it a bit of a prod, and it's kicked back into life again now. So it's kind of reiterating what it's doing. Not made any changes to that file, but that might be as expected. And stopped again, so I should kick it back around. See what happens now. So just checking that there's nothing wrong with the rate limiting, or just try it again. Now obviously this is quite a complicated application. There's a large number of changes that it's trying to understand. Quite a lot of dependencies between the libraries. Some of this code's 10 years old, so it's not it's not the best structure of code, if I'm honest. In terms of the number of projects, you probably break that up a little bit more. But it's understandable that it's taking quite a bit of time. So I'll just get it to continue a little bit. One of the things that I have noticed, particularly with the Gemini model, is that you do need to kind of reassure it that it can continue. And as we kind of go through this video and demonstrate some of the other models, some seem to be more autonomous, and some need kind of confirmation that it can continue. But as I say, this is quite a big particular project in one of the videos that will just checking that there's no problems with the license or anything like that. That's why it keeps stopping. But I can imagine that this would be quite frustrating if I was expecting, I guess, that in agent mode that we'd just put in a prompt and it would go away and do a load of stuff. I mean, it is making changes and those kind of things, but some of the videos that I've seen on YouTube have kind of suggested that out of the box things go away and do stuff quite quickly, and to be fair, some of the other models do that, do run away, but this has only made nine file changes to the this solution, to the project, so it's going to take quite some time to kind of migrate this over. And how long would it take a human to do this? Difficult to say, isn't it, really, unless you've done it. I'd imagine it'd be quite a few days of going through, copying some things over, refactoring. Some of the code won't work in .NET 8 because things will be deprecated, that kind of thing. But in this particular scenario, it would be quite slow, I would say. Let's just ask it why. Do you think? Why do you keep stopping? See what it comes back with. It's quite polite, I'll give it that. But it's understandable. It's kind of telling us what it's done. It's quite explaining that there's quite a lot of files in there, and it needs to make quite a few changes. So but there you go. I mean that's the kind of the Gemini model, and it's the same as I say. It's quite a big project. It's quite a lot of changes, and it's understandable that it's kind of taking its time a little bit. And there we go. It's a large task that we're asking it to do, and it's trying to break it down into smaller, manageable steps. So that's kind of what a human would do. But anyway, that's the Gemini model. So the same thing here. So we're going to use exactly the same prompt and just use the Claude 3.7 Sonnet model. So we can see straight away that it's gone away and started to do stuff a lot quicker. So not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but we can see from quite a few of the kind of videos that I've seen online, does suggest that the Claude models are, are more suited to the kind of agent mode. So it's pretty much cracking on now. It's analysing all of the different parts of the project and the kind of parts of the prompt, and going away and kind of producing some tasks for that. And it's quite quick in terms of what it's doing. It's obviously reading quite a lot of files in comparison to quite a small particular task. So it's now kind of done what we asked it to do. It's put together a migration plan again. And it's okay. It's a bit brief. It's not really telling us much, really, but it's going to crack on and start changing files. So again, it's doing a lot more than the kind of Gemini model in terms of changes straight away. It's produced all of these changes here. Still working on this, and kind of doing what we asked it to do. It's trying to do a build. It's adding some packages in there. It's found an error and fixed it. So now it's restoring the packages and kind of come up with an error, trying to fix it again. It's got quite a lot of errors that it'll need to kind of work through, but it's kind of doing okay. It's pretty autonomous. Fix one of the errors. Kind of going through. Let's add in some authentication in there. See if it can get the .NET 8 versions of those files. It's making some changes again. Some code changes. Added in a model for the application user. Added through the entity framework, DB context. So this is quite interesting because it's commented stuff out. So it's copied things over and then stubbed out, either deliberately or because it knows that it'll need to do a load of changes to get those models to work. But it's kind of, that's fixed the problem. So it's not really too dissimilar to what a developer would do. Copying some code over, comment out what you'd know wouldn't work, and then we did have to prompt it to kind of continue again. But it's kind of knows that there's a load of models that it needs to work through. So it's going to kind of work through some of those in a second. But it's, straight away it's made four lots of changes. Didn't have to prompt it too much. Now it's obviously putting in the actual code for the entity framework, and bang, we've got a load of errors. So it's kind of how a developer would work if that was the case. It'd copy in the code and comment out something definitely wouldn't work, and then uncomment it and then try to fix the errors, which is hopefully what it'll start to do now. And it's made some changes, and I've noticed it kind of does this with the Claude model. You kind of get half a change. I don't quite know why it's done that. I started to think that maybe it was my license at first, or maybe it was a problem with rate limiting, which I have come across, and we'll see in one of the other kind of parts of this. But it's it's kind of carried on. It's putting some of the dependencies in there, and I've got 59 errors. It's going to go through some of the other models, I think, in a minute. Kind of correct some of those errors down. But yeah, that kind of half making changes is a bit concerning, really, because somehow it hasn't noticed that. Now I am running the preview version of Visual Studio 2022, so and to kind of get some of this functionality, but so maybe it's a problem with just the fact that it's a preview version as opposed to the kind of models and particular format, but who knows. But as I kind of said in the earlier part of the video, that I'm not going to go through actually trying to migrate this, because it's becoming quite apparent. Some of the videos that you kind of see online show these things that seem to be quite quick. Now this is obviously quite an old, it's 10 years old kind of file structure and project, and it's using the .NET 4.8 framework, and we're taking that from a framework to a .NET 8, the core version essentially, so quite a lot of differences, so wouldn't expect it to be super quick, but it's certainly kind of highlighting it's not necessarily a quick change. There's 254 in that survey model lines of code that it's changed, so so it looks like it knows it now needs to start going back to the application user. Let's go over to the dashboard controller, but pretty soon it will have to pick up that application user. So we're back up to 64 errors now. But it's no different than if a human was doing it. It's kind of jump around a little bit, correct some of the errors. So there's no problems with the rate limiter or anything like that at the minute. So now if we do the kind of same thing but with the GPT 4.1, so this is from all accounts it's the model of the 3, but it's from everything that I've read, it's kind of supposed to be the better one to kind of for code use, and we can see straight away it kicked in pretty much straight away. This is the kind of later of the migrations I've done, so it's kind of had all the traffic to the Copilot servers, and the kind of rate limiting for that didn't kick in, although I have had it kick in other things. So again, we're kind of putting some of the layout files together, and it's trying to build it straight away again, which is quite good. And certainly what we asked it to do, but again it's stopped and ready to give it a bit of a prompt to start back up again. So it's kind of going away, so it's told us what it's going to do. It's planned things out again, so again the sort of thing that you'd expect a kind of developer to kind of do, put together what they're going to do for the particular task, and kind of start coding away. So this is kind of a little bit more in between, I guess, between the Gemini and the Claude kind of models. it's being a bit more human in the same way that the Gemini model is, but it's also, you know, interacting with the code as well. Let's just check, see whether I can find the see whether there's a rate limit. No. So a bit of pausing again, but again, you know, there's a lot of files in this, and there's a lot of code. As there's a kind of coming back to, it's a 10-year-old projects and solution, so you know you'd expect it to struggle a little bit, but it's told us what the planned actions are, and you know, let's just kind of get it to continue. So it's understood. It told us what it needed to do, kind of told us what the actions were, and then it'll start to kind of work through some of those files. What's interesting with all these different kind of models is that you know, they do approach things in the same way that a dev would. You know, it's just added some comments about what needs to be done, and then built it and stopped. Not necessarily saying that devs would do that, but you know, it's kind of having that kind of human feel to things, and when I've used this in the past, it does kind of start asking, you know, do you want to do that, or shall I do it? And you know, there does seem to be that kind of human feel. And I don't quite know where that comes from. Whether that's just the training of the model, or you know, maybe if you're using kind of smaller projects, it's a bit more autonomous, but it's not quite as autonomous as the Claude model. You know, again, it's just made some changes to that HTML file or CS HTML, and not really done anything, and then built it. So that's a bit odd in its own right, and then it's just stopped. So now it's saying, do we want it to do stuff, or do we want to do it? Well, for me, the kind of purpose of this agent mode is that we hand as much kind of autonomy over to the agent as possible, because if you're dealing with this kind of solution where there's a lot of files in here, you kind of want it to do a bulk of the work, you know, and adding comments to files. Now maybe it'll come back to these files and make the actual changes that it's needed, but I guess there is some benefits. And then it's asking our opinion, so we'll just kind of tell it to proceed again. You know, but like I say, you kind of want it to do a lot of the work for you, because otherwise you're having to kind of do the stuff yourself. But you know, it does kind of say that it's stubbing some of the steps, some of the code, and it has come back to that controller now and added some stuff in there. So you know, maybe it's just, you know, the 3 different types of AI produce different results in different ways, and maybe that this is just one of those differences that, but it has built successfully now, and it has kind of gone through that process, whereas the Claude one just kind of seemed to plow on without kind of building things, which is what I specifically asked in the prompt. You know, I did kind of say, please make sure that you build regularly, because you know, the last thing we want to do is to get something to go away for 10-20 minutes, make a load of changes that we shouldn't really commit. We should be committing workable code. Okay, maybe it doesn't necessarily have all the features that we need, but by definition we're committing something that will build. It's kind of one of those gated steps that a lot of people would make sure was that we don't allow code to be committed that doesn't build. And certainly if we're using CI or CD, you can't use it if it doesn't build. So okay, so it's going away and actually implementing the dashboard controller, making quite a few changes to that. And it knows that there's some errors, which is just reading in. So now it knows that it needs to create some models. We've got 9 errors here. So obviously asking whether it should do it or whether we want to do it, or whether we want to change the approach and provide the correct data access layer. So it's obviously referencing the library now, which is good. None of the other models have done that. Now maybe they did it behind the scenes, but it should go away and now start to correct some of these errors. Which it has done. It's dropped it down to 4 errors, and so obviously moving on to something else. Yeah, I mean there's 222 files in that library project. That's quite monolithic, really. That really should have been broken down into smaller. Obviously microservices for starters, but it's doing its best to kind of work with what we've given it, which it's the whole point of this exercise. It's a real world example. It's not a brand new project that I'm asking it to build from scratch. It takes something that's not nice and kind of do its best to kind of implement it. So it's gone away. It's referenced it and it's fixed 3 of the 5 errors that it had, and still failed to build, but it knows that it's got some models missing that it's going to try and change or extend, I'd say. But what's interesting, so there we go. So it's just added a couple of models, still going. So it's not paused as much now. But it should hopefully kind of start to fix some of those last 2 errors. It's got rid of one of them. Now it knows that it needs to work with these so again it's asking, do we want it to make the change, or yes, please make all the changes. Kind of don't really want to be picking this task up, in kind of piecemeal. That's the whole point of this exercise, is to see how good it is at working with the kind of code that we've given it, really. So so it's failed again, and kind of correct that, but you know, I'd say it's doing pretty good, really. You know, it's only kind of 10-minute stints at these particular models, you know, and just to see how far it gets, really. You know, it's telling us what we could do to fix it, but you know, it's kind of fixed one of those errors. Now it should go away and add these two models, or view models, I should say. So hopefully we should see that stub code now disappear. It knows that it's failed because those few models were missing. So if we go back in, and there you go, it's added them back in now. So now we should start to see that sort itself out. Yep, and we've got rid of the errors. So you know, it's good in that respect, from compared to the other two kind of AI agent models. You know, we can see that you know, I would say from what I've seen that this seems to be the better of the three, possibly because it's the newest of the three. I'm not sure, if I'm honest. You know, but these things do keep stopping, so let's give it another kick to see if it will carry on. And I think it will stop again, if I'm right. Yeah. So it knows that it's got more to do, but you know, it's stopped. Let's try the whole kind of prompt again, just to make sure that. So yeah, so we can see that, you know, it's hit a problem now. Just see what that is. Let's retry that. Yeah, we'll undo that. And yeah, you can see that we've now hit the rate limit there. So this is kind of one of the problems that you know, that I've seen. Even with the free version of the kind of Copilot stuff, is that, you know, we do tend to hit this rate limit. So this is the Copilot Pro, you know, and I've not, I've only used this today for these three particular tasks. So it's been going for probably half an hour, something like that. We've hit a rate limit, so that's not great. That isn't, I would say. But you know, that wasn't the kind of purpose. The purpose was to see, you know, if we could take something that's quite, you know, kind of monolithic, you know, quite old, 10 years old, and see whether we could modernise it using, you know, AI to kind of convert that and migrate it over, and you know, out of the three different kind of agent modes and models that you can differently use, you know, which one seem to perform better. So you know, it's just an example, so I don't think you can necessarily pick up a conclusion from that particular you know, task. But you know, we can see that there's definitely three different approaches. You know, the kind of Gemini and the GPT give you quite a nice detailed plan of what it's going to do, and that would help in its own right if you were trying to kind of do this on your own. But to kind of break that down into a nice migration plan is quite good. And then obviously Claude seems to just kind of steam in there and make changes, and it kind of ignores a little bit, to want of a better phrase, the instruction to build periodically. But again, I guess there's scenarios to kind of say which one you would choose. But as I say, it's just an example to see how it would kind of fare in a real world example. So yeah, so that's kind of it for this video. So I know it doesn't really kind of show, like I said in the introduction, it's not meant to show a full migration, but it's just kind of meant to give a real world example of an approach. So yeah, thanks for watching.